Hey guys, I'm Jacinta Robinson and welcome to the Fearlss podcast, where I interview athletes who achieve incredible things. Today's guest is a 3-time Olympic water polo player who represented Australia in the 2008 Beijing Games, 2012 London Games, and 2016 Rio Games. During her debut at the Olympics, she scored 12 goals, making her the third leading goal scorer in that tournament, which was a testament to her work ethic and her commitment to the sport. I'd like to welcome Bronwen Knox. You've played water polo for more than 20 years, and 15 of those years was at international level. You've been selected to represent Australia at the Olympics for 3 times, and from 2013 to 2016, you were the captain of the women's team. You completed a Bachelor in Biomedical Science and completed your law degree. Welcome to the podcast, Bron.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to get into water polo because I've heard so much about how wild this sport is.
Yeah, well, it is a contact sport. Things do happen under the water, but the higher skill you get, the more clean and more beautiful and more it is like a dance than anything else.
Oh, really? So I know, like, a friend of mine was just saying to me the other day, like, she got into it and she was saying that, well, she was an elite level, but she was saying people were like ripping her togs and kicking her and she had heaps of bruises. And then she's like, oh, no wonder why they put the cameras under, like, in the Olympics. Is that... So you're saying it wouldn't be like that at all?
Not really. Sometimes it's true. It does happen. You're just trying to do whatever you can to stop the ball. And unfortunately, all you're wearing is a pair of swimmers. And that's the only thing you can get if you can't grab arms or hands or whatever you can reach. I think the most swimmers I ever went through in a game is 4. I think it was a dodgy batch because I couldn't believe they just kept breaking.
Yeah.
But other than that, like at Olympic level, I wear the same swimming cozy the whole way through. Like it doesn't get ripped, it doesn't get stretched. It stays, and we have one for each game that they sort of budget for us, and we never really go through more than 1 or 2 in the entire 2 weeks. So it does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't. Unfortunately, the underwater cameras aren't part of the reffing either, so it doesn't matter what happens underwater. It's more for viewers and spectators than anything else. But it is a contact sport. You do end up with bruises. Like I've had finger holds from people grabbing your arms so tight, and you get scratches because your skin gets so...
it gets like wrinkly
and
soft.
Wrinkly and pruny, so it gets so soft. Even if you cut your nails, you go one way, someone goes the other, and you can clip people. It happens. But the higher level you get, the more technique comes into play and the less physical. Like it's still physical, but the less holding. You're sort of always on the move, and if someone can't catch you, they can't grab you. So you've got to be constantly moving and changing position, and you protect yourself in that way, but it also is part of the gameplay.
Yeah. So for the listeners that are listening in right now, just give us a brief understanding of what water polo is.
Hard to explain. It's a little bit like European handball meets soccer in the water. You're in a team, most goals win. You've got to get the ball past the goalkeeper. There are positions, but you're not stuck into staying in that one position only, so there's a bit of fluidity around it. There's 4 quarters, 8 minutes. Actual time, they go for about 15 to 20 minutes depending on the game style. But yeah, it's tough. You can go swimming up and down a full quarter and not have a single break because no one scored a goal.
Yeah.
So it's pretty... there are different rules about holding, sinking, grabbing. They're pretty technical and hard to explain because the way one referee interprets them is different from another, and what they see, and it's what they can see above the water, not what's generally happening below the surface.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and it's hard to explain, but it can be really exciting and really interesting to watch.
Yeah. And so, Bron, tell us about how did you get into water polo? Where did it all start for you?
As a swimmer, being from Queensland, you get taught to swim early. I swam 8 to 10 times a week growing up, and then when the Sydney Olympics were on, my family drove us all down. I'm one of 5, so big family, and went and watched the Olympic Games. We went and watched whatever and whatever we can get tickets to, and I ended up getting tickets to the gold medal match in Sydney and watched the Aussies win the first ever women's water polo Olympic gold medal.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
It was so much fun. I remember sitting in the stands. We were on about halfway, way up the back, and I was just with my mum, and there was some 40-year-old guy next to me. I was about 12 years old or 14 at the time. And I just remember we never sat down, and I turned to him and he turned to me and we both went, yeah. And I just thought, what an amazing experience. And I wanted to be down there on that pool deck. And it was a natural conversion probably for me. I played netball, basketball, volleyball, everything. I love team sport, but I fell over a lot on land, still do. All my injuries somehow are land-based, not water-based. So go figure. So I just sort of naturally fell into it. And after a couple of years, I actually stopped swim training or converted my swim trainings more to water polo.
Yeah. And then were you based in Brisbane when you learned, like doing the water polo? And
Yes. Yeah, I've been based in Brizzy my whole life. I've travelled. Once I graduated from high school, I went to the US on scholarship for a couple of years, which was really cool. It was upstate New York, so we had seasons. We had snow. We did snowboarding. It was great. I've never been so cold in my life, and having to trudge up to training at 5 a.m. in the morning in hip-deep snow was never fun, but it was definitely an experience. I've lived in Sydney and Melbourne as well, but most of my development years were here in Brizzy.
Yeah. And then you've completed a couple of degrees, right? How do you manage to be at an elite level and completing your degrees? Because from my understanding, to go to the Olympics, there's a lot of training involved, and it's not just training. There's also, I'm assuming, a lot of the back end of behind the scenes.
Yes.
Do you work as well on top of this?
I do. I work as well while I've been studying and training. My first degree, I didn't work as much. My parents supported me a bit more, which was lovely. Thanks, Mum and Dad. But it was hard. My first degree, I remember sitting there trying to work out if I could do this subject, and my course coordinator looked at me and said, you really need to start deciding between your hobby and your career, because you're going to end up unemployed and homeless. And I looked at him and I walked out of the room going, you have no idea what you're talking about. I went and dropped that subject. Yeah. And I ended up going back a couple of years later and ended up getting a 7 in it just to prove him wrong. Nice. Not stubborn at all. But it was really hard. It's a lot easier these days because everything's online, everything's recorded. But my first degree, it was a lot of networking, talking to lecturers and professors and students, because every semester I'd have new people because everyone was on a different schedule to me, because I couldn't do the regular 4 subjects each semester or regular 2 subjects. I had to work within the prereqs and when I was available and when I wasn't, and how in-depth were their labs, were their tutors, tutorials, and that I couldn't get to. So I had to really forward plan a whole semester by week 1 of each, or even week 0 before we even went into week 1. Yeah. And make sure they knew my face, they knew who I was, and go out to them every time I was there and asking questions and constantly remind them that I was there, even though I think one semester I missed 11 out of the 13 weeks, and I was just constantly having to be my own motivator and learn and really research, because there was no online information
available to you.
Yeah, it was all.
So why though? Why did you want to go pursue these careers when you had the Olympics?
Unfortunately, my sport, there's not that much money in it. It's Olympic glory, which everyone is chasing, and we hunt down like nobody's business. But once, that wears off, if you can't capitalize on it, you're sort of stuck at ground zero. I've had a couple of friends who haven't done anything and they retire, and it's a whole cycle of mental health issues, and you've gone from such a high and being on top of the world to suddenly you're no one in the big open world, and you feel a bit lost. You don't have your schedule. We've been so regimented every day, you know exactly what you're doing, exactly what you're going to do next week. and suddenly you've got this freedom and you get a bit lost. And I think for me it was, you never knew when your career was going to end, with injury, with non-selection. So my parents were always about, you have to study something. We'll support you for the first 4 years outside of school, as long as like by support they actually housed me, which was great. But everything else was up to like phone bill, car bill, all that sort of stuff was on me. It was really important for me to have something outside. Plus, if you put all your eggs in one basket, there's so much pressure to not put one foot wrong in that journey. And, you know, we're a contact sport. You do get injured. You do break a finger. You do get your shoulder pulled the wrong way, or you do something that's going to put you out for a couple of weeks that could see you miss selection if it's at the wrong time. So for me, it was always important having a plan B and I didn't know what I wanted to do. It's probably why it's taken me so long to work that out. But it's been a really good experience, and everything's taught me something along the way and taught me something about myself. So for me, it was just making sure there was something outside of that all-encompassing Olympic dream, because you just never knew if you were going to get there.
And I think that's really smart, because a lot of people tend to see what they want to become and maybe don't weigh up what's involved, and then go, I'm just going to go all in. And they go all in, and then, like you said, have an injury and you're screwed, and then they are lost. What about your friends? Like, or have you experienced like where you feel like what you said with the mental health, they feel lost, they feel down? How have yourself or your friends, how have you pushed through that?
It's really important to develop really great support networks. Like my family and friends have really supported me throughout. But it's been interesting, like from the beginning of my career to now, my friend group has drastically changed. Like family, obviously, they're family. They love to come to the Olympics, so they love to support me, and they will support me however they can. But friends, like my school friends, just didn't understand that I had early morning trainings. And when we got free from school and were at uni, it wasn't that I could go out every night and have fun and get up and still go to uni the next day. I had training at 5 a.m. or training till 9 or 10 p.m. at night. They just didn't really understand that, and it sort of became an out of sight, out of mind. And it became a lot harder to maintain those friendships, because it's just that understanding of like, again, they supported me, but it just, if you weren't there, you were just sort of forgotten about. And that was really difficult, being like 18 years old and losing all these friends you've had for 5 years. But for me, being in a team sport, they naturally become your second family. You spend 5 hours a day with these girls day in, day out for years and years, and they're all going through the same thing, and it just becomes your second family. And we had such a close group in growing up from that junior to senior level, that I think there were 9 of us that just from when we were 16, we trained together every day until we were 22. And then some girls started to move on or move up through the ranks. So it became my second family, and it was a fantastic experience, but it was really hard. And you see it every Olympics, people come out of the woodworks saying, oh, remember we were friends, or they pop it up on Facebook or Instagram, and you're like, I haven't spoken to you in 20 years. But we always appreciate the sport wherever we can get it, but it's having that close support network that understand that you're not going to be happy every day after training when you've been working your way up and down the pool, you're full of lactic acid, you just want to go to bed. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you couldn't care less. And it's those friends who, you know, appreciate that you can't get to a wedding or a birthday, and, you know, just say whenever you get here, it's great. Whenever we get to see you, it might be every 6 months, but it's like nothing's changed when you see them. So it's those friendships that really start becoming part of your strong network, and because they just accept you for what you can give them and what they can give you, and it's reciprocal, and it just makes it so much easier when you've got that understanding, and they know what's important to you, and they'll support you even if it sounds absolutely crazy, which sometimes when you say it out loud that you're up at 4 a.m. and you don't get to bed till 11, but you do it every day, every week, and you just keep going.
And I think Tony Robbins says this in one of his speeches, like it's a ritual, like to get to these levels that you're at, you need to be consistent with your training. You need to have that. And people then look at you and be like, well, how the hell did you do it? Well, it's the times that they, like you said, were turned a blind eye and didn't want to be part of that. And they don't sometimes understand that that's what it takes. It's like the behind the scenes, and the hard yards and the don't want to do it. And
it's that like daily grind. Always, whenever anyone asks me, what do you want to do with your profession after you finish? I'm like, well, I want to enjoy the daily grind. Yes, it might be hard. It might be challenging, but it's something you need to enjoy day in, day out. That's going to push you and, what's the word I'm looking for? Like really challenge you, and you get rewarding from it. Even if you get setbacks, like it's not going to be, every day is not enjoyable, but that end result and something you're working for is going to be.
And I think that forms who you are. Like it shows that you want to feel healthy, you want to be challenged. So yes, of course you're going to go out there and do that past your career in the Olympics, which is fantastic, and a great mindset to develop, especially for anyone listening that may be wanting to get to that point. I think that's something that it becomes a must, not I have to go do this. It's like I'm doing it because that's where I want to be.
Yeah, like my squad at the moment that I'm training with go from like 15-year-old girls and then up to about 20, and then it like severely drops off until there's me right up here at 33. And they like, every time I chat with them, like, oh, it just comes so naturally to you. I'm like, well, it's been years and years of hard work. Like they just see the end product, but it's easy to miss those steps and those years of putting in, missing out on teams, going back to the drawing board. How can you improve? And it's been imperative having great networks and great mentors about how do you set up those goals. It's not just that lofty end goal that, any setback's going to destroy. It's how those little goals and little steps, and always reevaluating and readjusting, and how, there's not one correct way to get anywhere. There's always different ways you can work your way in.
And do you feel like during that journey you've been like you felt like, oh, maybe I'm not going to get there? Like, have you ever felt like that?
Definitely. In the lead up to Beijing, my first Olympics, I remember we had a 3-month camp in Canberra, and everyone was getting a individual meeting with all the coaches. There were 6 male coaches down there, and it was all about how the camp's going, so I wasn't too stressed. Literally walked into the room and the head coach goes, you might want to go take 5 minutes, go prepare yourself because you're not going to like what we're going to say. And I was just there.
Holy shit, 5 minutes. You're like, what is going on?
I walked out going, I don't know what to do here. Like, what do I need to prepare for? So I just sort of, went for a little walk, came back. I'm like, are you ready for me now? And I got told to sit in, go sit down. You're not allowed to say anything. You just got to listen. And every single coach just laid into me about what they were unhappy with, disappointed with. And I hadn't heard anything from anyone for 3 months, and they were just putting all of this on me then. I was like, why haven't you told me this before now? And they're like, you're not allowed to say anything. And I was like, okay. I walked out.
But why?
They just didn't want to hear it. And I said, fine. I went back a week later after talking with our sport team psych and came up with a plan about how I was going to approach it, and went back to the head coach, and we had about a 2-hour discussion about everything, and I like acknowledging their concerns and responding to what I thought, and it worked out that what we were seeing my role as was completely different to what it had first started at.
Yeah.
And what I was under the impression of. And for me, that was the biggest lesson in communication that there ever was, because it was intimidating and it was really tough to go back into that room and have that conversation with the coaches, but it worked out. Like the flow-on effect from that has just been unbelievable, that I not only felt like I had a voice and could finally voice that, it was being able to stand up for what I believed in and what I thought, and it created a trust between my coach and myself. And eventually, when he was not always the nicest person, but I was able to say, look, you can't talk to people like that. You want us to be professionals. In a professional environment, this wouldn't be how anyone would speak to anyone else. And so it really sort of gave me a good foundation to build my future career on. But it was tough to hear. And
how do you, like, you said that you weren't allowed to speak to anybody. What the hell did you do? Like, I know you went to the psych, but like, did you like, I don't get it. I would have been like, oh my God, like, call my mum, call my friend. I just wouldn't know how to cope with that.
Yeah, I actually jumped in my car and drove to the nearest park and went for a walk around the lake in Canberra. There are a lot of lakes, and I found a lovely one and just did a lot of self-reflecting. I didn't want to call my parents because I felt like they had a lot of eggs in that basket as well, because they'd supported me for so long, and I'm one of 5. Nothing ever really came easy to any of us, so we had to work and work out things to get by, and my parents sacrificed quite a lot for us. So I wasn't prepared to say 3 months in and I want to turn around and give up.
Yeah.
I spoke to a couple of girls that I'm close with in the team who had a bit of experience with the coach, and got some feedback from them, and it took me about a week before I was feeling ready to go back, and I still didn't feel ready when I went back.
Yeah.
But I made that meeting and I said, okay, well, this is it. I've got to prepare. And I've never been so nervous, and I'm usually pretty shy, but I felt very passionate about what I was talking about, and that sort of, but it wasn't the nicest way to end that camp, thinking I was about to get dropped, and I had to fight my way into that camp to begin with, because we had some outrageous physical goals that we had to get, which, like, I think it was, the one I always use as an example is we had to bench press our body weight, and my coach wanted me at 100 kilos. And I said, I can't get there. There's no way. Like, I'm big, but I'm not that big. Yeah. Also, I never wanted to see triple figures as an elite athlete trying to prepare for an Olympics. It's not something it's not in my body shape, like, to do that and be able to move up and down the pool at the speed and time. And we had to, I think I ended up bench pressing 95, which wasn't good enough. But the other girls in the team who were like 50 kilos and they benched their 50, and here I was at 95, and it wasn't good enough to make this team. And I just thought this was unbelievable. And there were 6 of us who didn't make our goals, and all 6 of us were in the Olympic team, and all 6 of us scored goals in the really big games. So it sort of reinforced the lesson that you can't always rely on numbers or figures. It's what people bring to the table outside of that, and it created us in us that push and resistance and resilience to keep pushing back and getting better. So it's those few months weren't great, but
maybe they did it on, like, strategically, because
mind games.
Of you, like,
and I remember we had to make a speech in front of the entire squad of why we deserved to be there. Yeah. And they had to ask questions and decide if we were allowed in or not, which was really nerve-wracking because we were essentially going to go in there and take someone else's spot who was already there. Oh, okay. So it was tough, and I was 19 or 20 at the time, and it was definitely an experience.
How does that work in team environments when they're, like you were just saying before, like, there's 18 of you, and to go to Tokyo, the next Olympics, it's got to narrow down to 12. Like, how do you cope with that when you train and you fall in love with these people? How does that affect you emotionally? And
it's tough. You've got to be selfish, but then you've also got to be selfless, because you need to get better to get the team better, to get the next person better. And if anyone's going to beat you out for your spot, they've got to be better than you. But you want everyone to get better because you want everyone to perform well. So it's a catch-22. Like, I'm going to sit here and give you advice about how you're going to get better, but then you could potentially take my position. So by making you better, I've also got to get better as well. So it's tough because you're fighting day in, day out to each training session to be better than the people you're competing for, and then suddenly you've got to be teammates, you've got to trust them. So we do a lot of work in the culture space because it's cutthroat. You know, one day you're in, the next day you're out, and you might be physically better, but you don't fit into the team structures as well, or it goes down to there's so much discretion in our selection process that it's so tough. Whereas like swimming, it's if you're fastest there, you're in. If you make the time, you're in. Athletics is the same, but those team sports, there's all about that team cohesion and team dynamic that you play a part, that sometimes you can feel like it's a cop-out of saying, oh, you might be the best player physically, but you don't fit in the team, so we're not going to pick you. And you just sit there going like there's nothing more I could have done to be better because, you know, I'm the fastest, I'm the strongest, but it's just not what they want or how they want to play the game. Their tactics might be a mobile game, and I'm not the most mobile person, so I've got to work to be more mobile. And
do you know there's pre-hand so you can work on it, or?
We do a bit. Like it's not something that's just going to throw left field because we've played together for so long, but the rules are changing for Tokyo. We used to have 13 players. Now we have 11 with one reserve. Yeah. So we don't know how that's going to affect our team game as such because we've never really played it. Because the way we used to play, we tend to get a lot of personal fouls, so you only get 3 in a game. So if you get too many players on 3, suddenly you're playing your player down for the rest of the game. So we're going to have to adapt and change a bit, and we're still not exactly sure from a coaching perspective what that's going to look like. So that side is sort of tough, but there's not going to be too many drastic changes from what we have done in the past.
Like when you play the game at that Olympic level, do many of you get injured and then there's like less people on the court? Is that how it's just like a knockout? Like how does it happen?
It does happen, but most people, when you're at the Olympic Games, you'll do whatever you can to get back on. I've seen girls have dislocated shoulder, they just strap it up to the 9s and go back in and play because they know that it's their last game of their entire career. They don't care what they do. They don't care the damage they do. And after talking to them, you ask them back and they still say it was worth it. Some people don't because maybe they didn't get the result they wanted or they didn't make the team, but it does happen. Like leading into Rio, we had a lot of girls out with recurrent injuries. So people were playing more and playing different positions, which ended up seeing the load increase and which ended up seeing me actually receive an injury from it. Where my clavicle started disintegrating in the shoulder joint. Really random. Apparently weightlifters get it.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, never seen in water polo. So it's osteolysis of the AC joint. So the bone is just due to inflammation, the bone's just slowly disintegrating from the end.
Where does it go?
It just
floats around.
Yeah, it just dissolves and be reabsorbed and run through your systems, and it just goes. So
wow, does that affect you now when you throw and stuff?
Luckily it was my left shoulder, so not so much.
You right-handed?
I'm right-handed, so it's more the wrestling and twisting that can get a lot of load. But I've spent a lot of time trying to rehab it to the point where now it's more of a maintenance thing than anything else. But then again, my whole body at the moment is a maintenance thing because I'm older, it's tougher, and we've got to train smarter for me. Like I'm not like the 18-year-old girls in our team who can do 2-3 hour sessions in a day with an hour off in between and feel great. For me, that's like hell and death. I'm just not going. And I play very physical position to begin with, so
you're in the center, hey?
Yeah. So I always have someone sitting on me, essentially.
Yeah.
So pushing down. So even if I'm not working, I'm working because I've got to support someone else's weight and still stay available, still watch the game, still be ready for the ball whenever it comes in. So it's it's.
Can you, like, from your years of experience, can you see moves that are going to happen before it's happening? Like, can you see it all structured and put into play?
Yes, I like to think I can. Some people might disagree, but I can see where people will become available, where the ball needs to go, probably 3 or 4 passes in advance. If people don't change decisions last minute or the defense might change, it's a dynamic tactical game, so it changes between inches. 1 inch one way it's too far, 1 inch the other it's too far, so it's a constant thing. But it's over the years you've seen a lot of scenarios that have played out, and it sort of we do so much video review that you remember them, you talk through them, you go, okay, maybe we'll try this next time they do this, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But through all the experience, I think I've seen likely most things that can happen. There's still things that surprise you about the ball just bounces a weird way and ends up where it shouldn't. Like I remember I had one shot where I leant in and went to go like straight and it curved around a player because it hit a wave. I'm just like, that's not normal.
Yeah.
But it went in the goal because everyone dived the other way. It was going to be definitely saved, but because it hit this wave and somehow curved 90 degrees.
You're like, I planned that.
Yeah, like just perfect wave, but can't recreate it. So it's stuff like that just happen that you've got to really go on the fly for.
Yeah. That's cool that you can sort of see what's going on, and then like keeps it interesting for you if there's like that slight surprise and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. It's every game is different. Like there's no two games that are the same, and you've got the referees to contend with, where they're going to be really technical, where they're going to let some things go, and it turns out to get really heavy. It's all. I think that's why I keep coming back and why I keep playing. Is there's no two ways around things. You're always learning something from every game, and it's always challenging you to step up that next level.
And leading into the Olympics, do you feel like there's a lot of pressure on you for, like, let's say, like what we're talking about training before? Does your training increase?
Our training doesn't necessarily, or it does to a degree. Our time together increases. So we will now, from last September, I think we spend about 10 months together out of 12. So that's traveling around, being interstate, being overseas, which means training together at that level while we're not training longer hours. It's a lot more intense, and any mistake you do can be magnified. Any new thing you're trying and you're just not getting, it puts a lot more pressure on you. I've got to get this next session. So there's that added pressure. It's not necessarily more hours in the pool. It's more intense hours in the pool and more pressure on each second you're there to make something happen. Because when you have a bad session, it's always like they bring out, this person or this country wouldn't be training like this. We need to bring this at the next level. And it's just a constant reminder that there's people out there going for your dream, going for your goal, and you've got to sort of outplay them, outbeat them, outtrain them.
How do you deal with that mentally? Because there would be a part of you that would it would thrive on it because you want to get better, but then there'd be a part of you that's like, fuck, like is I'm trying.
It goes back to that, having something else outside of the sport to take your mind off things. Because if you're just going home to refuel, recover before the next session, you're thinking about everything you did wrong, everything you want to improve, and you sort of got to frame how you think about things. You might have you haven't scored a goal, you're trying this new technique and it's just not working, but it's getting you better. It's reframing that criticism and that critique on yourself and from your teammates and your coaches to how can you use it to get better, because it's those are the people who tend to thrive, whereas those people who just get in their heads about, I'm terrible, I'm bad, it just becomes this vicious cycle, and then you stuff up the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And it's we've worked heaps on how to breaking that cycle, and really I've had this most of my career, the 4 Fs. Yeah. So it's pretty much fuck it, I've stuffed up. Yeah. Then it's forget it. So it's gone, it's done, it's happened. No, it's fix it. Then it's forget it. Yeah. And then it's focus or refocus. So now I've got it to a point where I can do that pretty much, in a second of just it's just so annoying that you've stuffed up. What did you need to do better? Use your legs more or use your wrist to finish that pass off. And then, all right, move on.
And you do that in the game?
Yep, every time I know I've made a big error that it's going to play on me, I sort of make sure it's just a natural thing now. Like, what should I have done? All right, let's move on. What are we doing now?
How can I be better?
What's my next job?
Yeah.
Like giving myself my next job. And I've got things that I know I'm really good at, and it's how I'll refocus back on those and start on those and build myself back into the game, rather than, you know, people want to go from 0 to 100 so often. Like they want to be 10 goals ahead in the first 5 minutes. It's not going to happen. Yeah. Not at international level. You're going to go goal for goal pretty much for the entire 60 minutes, and you're going to have to maintain that pressure on and absorb that pressure back. And it's just focusing on, what am I doing next? What is my next goal, my next target? I'm not going to let this person beat me one-on-one up the pool. Like, it's just giving yourself that task, that role, and knowing your little jobs and getting those done. It's those basics, the foundations that really win you games. It's not amazing trick plays and things you've never practiced. It's that foundation skill, who can execute it more consistently throughout the game.
And being like the captain for the number of years that you were, how did you maintain like motivating your team and also motivating yourself? Like, is there a point that there's a split and a divide where you're like, I've got to focus on myself, or can you seem to thrive everything together?
It's interesting. It's a bit of both. I remember leading in after a few years I was captain, and I just remember thinking, I'm not your mother. I'm not here to do your job for you. Yeah. You need to get this done. You need to grow up, be an adult, and do your work. But sometimes there were times, like for me, I'm quite a relaxed person, and we've got some really intense individuals in our team that like everything a certain way. Everything's got to be particular and done the right one way or the other way. And I'm more relaxed, and I like to lead by example. And there's it's just time and time again, you've got constant meetings and constant discussions with coaching staff, with teammates, with your leadership group, and it's just it can suck all your time and all your recovery time and all your switch off time out of you. And it was a real balancing act, but in the games was the easiest way like that leadership is so easy. It's just natural. At my position, I naturally took control of one area of our defense and told everyone what to do. Games were easy. It was all the other stuff outside that, you know, roommates getting on each other's nerves and creating drama in the team because you lived together for so long and you're in each other's space, and your beds are right next to each other, and there's no way to escape the team or escape that pressure, and that plays on you and plays on the team. And it's managing that can be really draining, and have to really, you know, I end up setting aside some time where I'm like, I'm not even going to talk to my teammates. I'm just going to go read my book in the lobby or somewhere, wherever we were, in my room, whatever it might be, in the bathroom. Some baths quite comfortable. I've learned just to switch off, to recharge your own batteries, to be able to get back and do your job. But yeah, in the water, easy. Out of the water, could be hectic. Yeah.
And are you going to be captain for this Olympics coming?
I've actually stepped down from any formal leadership roles. After my year back or year off, when I came back, I didn't know if I wanted to keep continuing playing. I wanted to get fit. I wanted to see if I could still make the team and see if I still enjoyed it, and turns out I did. And then while I'm one of the more senior ones in the team, and I'm quite, I always give my opinion of how I see things, or like I help out our current leadership group, and I just sort of want to enjoy it. And even like we just had a camp last week here in Brisbane with the USA team, and the amount of extra meetings those leadership girls had, I was so glad to not be there, that I could go switch off, have a coffee with my other teammates, get to know them a bit better. It just made it so much more relaxing and fun, and just took that extra workload off. I could just focus on playing well, and like it doesn't change how I play in the water, how I lead in the water, what I do, or voicing my opinion, but it just takes off that extra, you've got to have 2 or 3 extra meetings with the coach each day or each other day, and it's you don't have that much time in the day to begin with, so it's nice to not have that extra burden. Like there's a lot of reward as well, like being able to lead the team out as captain, and when they play well, there's so much pride in it. But I think I've been there, I've done it. I think it's the girls who are there at the moment are fantastic, and they're doing a great job, and I'm going to support them however I can. And I think I'm really enjoying where I am and my role in the team. So it's not something I miss, like apart from being able to walk your team out in front of thousands of people and sing your anthem. But everything else, nothing's really changed aside from gives me a bit more enjoyment back in the day-to-day running of things.
Yeah. When you're in the game, can you hear like the roaring of the crowd, or you just so focused that you just like, oh, what's going on here? Like, how does it work?
Depends on the game. Some games you can hear everything. Like you can hear people in the back yelling, you can hear your teammates, you can hear the coach. Other times, like we played a final in Barcelona, you could not hear the person next to you in the water, and like you've got to be able to. You can read people's eyes and all that sort of stuff and their body language to know what they're saying without them actually saying anything.
Yeah.
But that only comes with time, and sometimes it's dead silent. No one's talking, no one's doing anything. There's nothing from the crowd, and you can hear everything, and you're just like, what is going on? Why is there so much noise? Like, but nothing. Yeah. It's interesting being both levels, and both are good and both are bad. Because you need to be able to talk and communicate, because things are going on behind you that you can't always see, and you've got to adapt to what things do. But most of the time, we always talk about having your head on a swivel and knowing everything, and sometimes you just got to react. You see something, you go for it, and hopefully the next person does the same, and becomes this domino sort of effect.
Yeah. And do you think that it takes like a special kind of someone to be part of a team rather than, because like you could do something solo, right? But being part of a team, do you feel like it's totally different? Like as in like you really have to like trust each other and bond and be able to win together, rather than, because like like if you go do something by yourself, you can just blame yourself.
Yeah like definitely.
Like if it doesn't work out, you're like, oh, I didn't train enough, or I didn't eat the right things, or whatever it may be. Do you feel like it takes a special somebody to be able to be part of a group at that top level?
I think everyone's capable of doing it. I think you've got to be willing to put that work in before you get there.
Yeah.
I think that's where people fall down, is they expect that it's just all going to work magically, whereas you've got to have those really tough conversations with your teammates about they're not pulling their weight. They've got to get it, like what's going on. You've got to have those conversations, and they're not nice and they're not pretty, because we live in such a high pressure environment that you've got to get things worked through within 24 hours. Otherwise they linger and fester and create disharmony. But so you've got to be able to stand up to anyone in the team and go, oh, we need to talk about this. I didn't like how you spoke to me, or I didn't like how you spoke to the coach about me, like without my permission, like all that sort of stuff. You've got to work through and trust and build that trust and maintain that trust in that team culture. And that only comes from being there day in, day out and talking through issues, not sweeping them under the rug, because you can when you're not together all the time and go, oh, I'll just let that go for a week. She's not swimming down. That's all right, whatever. It's not part of it. It's going to hurt her in the end, but actually it hurts everyone. Yes, she might not be recovering it properly, but in the end it's not going to make us a better team. So you've got to, no matter who you are, be able to stand up and say, look, you need to swim down. I've noticed the last couple of sessions what's going on. Why aren't you going by our team protocols? So, yeah, that's the tough stuff that people...
And then also to receive that as well, like your team telling you that, you got to drop your ego and like,
everyone gets really defensive, and you do a lot of work about, you just have to like receive it. You don't have to respond to it. I've coached boys and girls. Girls are so much harder to coach than boys. Boys get over things within a second.
Yeah.
Like you just tell them straight up and they're like, yep, sure, whatever. Girls, I find when I'm coaching girls, it's almost like a compliment sandwich. Like it's like, that's really good, but can you try and do this? But it was really good effort.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get really frustrated by that because in our team, like at our level, we're really direct. Like, we need this pass higher. We need you to do this. We need that. And you've got to accept it and not just go, oh, but I was trying to do this. You've got to say, okay, I will give that pass higher. Or let's work on that at training because I will need to know. I don't know where you want it because I've tried 4 different passes and it hasn't worked. You keep complaining about something. It's too high. It's too low. Like it's that Goldilocks syndrome of, well, let's do it over and over and over again until we get it right. Yeah.
I think that's good though if you're direct because then you know exactly where you stand. I think if you try and fluff around, it's the same as being in a relationship with someone. If you try and beat around the bush,
exactly.
It's like you're never going to solve it. Just go straight to the point. What do you want from that situation?
Yeah.
And then that way you can grow.
I definitely think that's something that's I've developed over the years, and now everyone's like, well, you're really direct. I'm like, I want an answer. I want to get better. You want to get better. How are we going to do this?
Yeah.
And I hate people go, oh, it'll work itself out. It'll happen. And you're like, what are you doing about it? How are you addressing it? And for me, my family hate it because they're like, oh, you're just so direct. And I'm like, I want to get it sorted.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to have this problem hanging over us. Let's just address it, move on. How are we going to build from it?
Yeah.
Like I think I hate rumors. I hate gossip. I just want things out in the open and people to be honest about it. And yeah, it's hard to hear sometimes, but it's a conversation. It's not an accusation.
And I think it's nice when someone can be direct, but then still be like, I love you. You're a great person, but this is what needs to be improved or whatever it may be. I think that's really cool that you can develop that in a team environment.
Definitely. And it's never a personal attack. It's not like your personality is so shit. Like, it's never that. It's always like, what's going on? Like, you turn up to training, you're not ready, you're not prepared, you've got no energy, and then you get to it's a conversation and they're like, oh, I'm fine, I'm just having a bad day. You're like, no, what's going on? And you keep like uncovering. It's like, because we're away so much, you've got, my partner's been like really, like, we're just fighting all the time because he wants me there or she wants me back, and like, and I can't I can't go away this weekend because we've got training till midday on Saturday, and they're just not understanding. So you get to the bottom of those things, and that helps build relationships as well, rather than going, oh, she'll snap out of it eventually. It's just much easier. Like, it's not an accusation thing. It's just, let's be direct. How can I help you? Because by helping you, we're helping everyone.
Yeah. And do you have any special morning routines that you do, even like leading up to comp? Like, are you visualizing how you want the game to turn out, or do you have like something like you have a coffee or?
I always have coffee. Yeah. It's a must. I don't like to focus too specifically on our gameplay. I like to know what our end goals are, because in the game I want to have that moment of like, oh no, we have to hit here and here and here and here. Like, it has to go A, B, C, D, R. As long as I know the end, it might not happen how we've spoken about it, but I know what we want to achieve. I can work it out as we go and work in with my teammates. I always do the same 4 laps warm up, just as a little mental switch of like, all right, 3 laps freestyle, 1 lap breaststroke, it's game time sort of thing. But other than that, I'm pretty loose. Like, I don't really like to have set things, because if they don't work, you get a bit of a panic, like, oh, my shoelaces aren't tied the right way. Or one girl used to love to chew gum, and she's like, I ran out of gum. Like, what are we going to do? We're in the middle of nowhere. There's nowhere to buy it. And it's just something that you're beholden to that I have never really liked the idea of.
Yeah.
So for me, it's that 4 laps. I've got control over that. I'm always going to have at least 4 laps warm up, no matter what. You're never just going to dive straight in and start a game. Yeah. Or you hope not. Yeah. That would be worst case scenario ever. Other than that, I like visualization a little bit, but I like the feeling of, I sort of try and relive that feeling of some of the really great goals or team goals we've had in the past, and it just sort of, it's like a confidence booster. Yeah. So almost like, it's not pure visualization. It's just like, you remember the last time you played that team, this worked really well, and you just sort of relive that feeling a little bit. And it's only like a minute or so, and it just sort of gets you in that mood to play, and that I'm going to do that again, and we're going to see how good it looks. And yeah.
And do you have like with your coaches, do you have a special nutrition plan leading up? How does that work for you guys?
Being a team, we're all so different, and great thing about water polo, there's no one body type that suits. We've got people from all over the world, all different. Like there's 4'5" girl who's like tiny but amazing. Then you've got those who are like bigger but command more space and so skillful. And so for us, everyone's different, and our nutrition plan is so individualized. We do a lot of work on it, how best to recover. How do we get nutrition when we're in countries that don't necessarily have the best reputation for things? Like when we're in China, we can't have any fresh fruit or veg. Everything has to be cooked, and sometimes you've got no control over what they give you. So you've sort of got to make sure you're packing extra protein. We travel with tuna all the time, or whatever you need to, like rice crackers. We've got a celiac in the team who's like any trace of gluten is like on the floor for 2 days.
Oh, no.
So we've got to make sure that, you know, we're careful, because even if you use a utensil and put it back in and then she uses it, or a toaster, like she gets so sick and she loses like 5 kilos, and she's nothing to begin with.
Oh, wow.
And
poor thing.
It changes her entire game, and she ends up not playing. And, you know, it's just something that we've got to be constantly aware of, and everyone's responsible for their own nutrition as much as the team can provide, and prepare places we go for what we require. It's like, for me, I'm a grazer. I have like 6 meals in a day, whereas my teammates will have massive meals and only 3. And when we can't have more than 3 meals a day, I just can't get enough energy to sustain me. So I've got to really be conscious about where I'm going to get that from, and because I can't have a big meal, it's force feeding myself to eat this meal and eat more rice on top of rice, and I'm just like, sometimes I just can't do it. So it's just having those plans in place, and we do a lot of work with dietitians about what we can use supplement wise, because there's such a risk of anti-doping or cross-contamination in supplements these days that we don't want any positive results from drug testing due to not double checking or triple checking what products we're using, because it's such a risk, because we get tested. Like I've been tested, last year I was tested about 6 times. 3 times in 1 week. And it's just, you've just got to be so on top of everything, because everything over the counter has a risk.
Wow. And like I watched that movie, I think it's called Icarus, and they explain, I'm like, it just blows your mind. Like you just have no idea. And I'm sure you've experienced it. Have you seen like people, you've been in it a long time now, you would have seen athletes just come out of the blue? And
we've seen people develop like drastically in a year, and you think, how can that happen, going from where you were to where you are? And sometimes it's possible, but you see like multiple people doing the same thing, and you're like, it's a bit risky. And you see other people's, like I'm involved in our anti-doping education here, and some of the stories I hear from my teammates when they're playing over in Europe is, they literally ran away. They refused to give a test and it was fine. And like that sort of stuff you would never hear of in our team or our culture, because we always submit to tests because we know we've done nothing wrong. It's not going to bother us. Yes, it's an invasion of privacy to some point, but if it proves that we're above board, then people are happy to do it, because people are hunting us down, because we're, the top 3 in the world, and, you're happy to comply, because, if I've got to comply, you've got to comply, and I know that I've done everything right. So it's out there, and there's a lot more. Like you see it with the WADA ban of Russia and all that sort of stuff for the upcoming Tokyo Olympics, and how that's going to work. We've got our European qualifiers on at the moment, and Russia are in top 4 position. So if they win, they'll get a berth to Tokyo, but then they've got to prove that they're clean. So it's interesting how it's all going to work, and it's tough that that's what our sport comes down to, is that cheating side, but you know, for us, it's not a question. We don't even consider it, and we do everything right and we educate everyone that hopefully no one makes a silly error by not checking their substance through the app that's so easy to check.
Because it's so interesting. I had Dane, and he's the Australian race walker.
Oh, yeah.
And he was telling us like how common it is, and it's happened in his events. And I thought, I didn't realize, like, after watching the movie, I was like, maybe you get tricked into it a bit. Like, sometimes, like, are there coaches saying, look, you won't get caught, just do it, like, you got to do it for the country?
Yeah.
Like, it seems to be like, if you're not educated yourself, you will fall into those traps.
Yeah, it can be such an institutionalized thing where it's just part of your day-to-day. You've never known any different, and you hope that these people who make all the decisions in your sport are making the right ones. But the power dichotomy between coach and athlete, you will do whatever they say to make that team because it's your dream. You've given up so much. And even now, sometimes I think back to when I first started, that some of the things I say and do, I wouldn't do when I was first coming up because I wanted to make that team. I didn't want to put a step wrong because, you know, if you're seen as a troublemaker, are they going to pick you even though you're the best? But you don't want to have that hanging over your head because she just keeps asking questions. She just wants to know everything. She doesn't trust us. And it's not about that. It's just about having that transparency and accountability in how we're approaching things. And yeah, it's that power dynamic that you don't want to upset because they've got your dream in their hands and they can crush it so easily. And you think it means nothing to them, I'm sure those decisions weigh so heavily on some of those coaches. But yeah, you don't want to put a step wrong. And if they say jump, you say how high. And if they say swim, you say, all right, just tell me when to stop. And yeah, it's strange. Like in a regular environment, you'd start thinking twice why am I jumping? Yeah. And but in that environment, you're so
focused on what you want.
Yeah.
And do you think, like, because obviously with Rio, that's huge, do you think that things are going to change now with the drugs, or do you think like it's just going to be an ongoing thing that we're trying to catch up on?
I think it's an ongoing thing. Technology these days is absolutely crazy in that world, and the funding behind it is nowhere near to the funding that goes into some of those processes about avoiding things. But I think there's a lot more focus on it. They're having a lot firmer stance. It's not, it's okay. It's more of a strict liability stance, and they're really starting to enforce it. Hopefully they're going to get better and better at it. But I think they've just got to start being more strict and more firm and stand by their decisions, because the more they're lenient, the more they say it's okay, you didn't mean to. Even if it's true, it's just opening up avenues for people to say, I didn't mean to either.
And not fair on you guys that are doing what is expected. Like I know that Dane was just saying this as well, like Australia is very strict. Like it'll come out of nowhere when you have to have a test.
Yep.
And even if you've just peed, you have to now wait until you can pee again, and they will stay there and watch you.
Yep. One earlier last year they turned up at my house, and I just got home from training, and I was having dinner and they came in and we watched Married at First Sight together. It was a great experience. And then because I lived with my sister at the time, my sister's like, I'm just going to go to bed. I'm like, yeah, you do what you do. I'm just going to hang out with the testers. And it was another hour, and most of them are lovely people. They know it's a invasion to some degree, but it's part of the sport. And unfortunately, people have done the wrong thing, and we've got to do this now to make sure that it stays clean. Otherwise, it just turns into a complete schmozzle, and people are going to do things that are really bad for their health. And later on in life, like I say now, I'm going to come out of my sport, I'm sure, with arthritis and recurrent injuries and bad knees and bad shoulders, but I'm not going out of my way to change my body chemistry and DNA and all that sort of stuff that is going to really drastically reduce my lifespan and life expectancy.
Well, you never know what it's going to do to the body because
Yeah.
it hasn't been done. So
Yeah, like there's things now that people are taking that aren't even authorized. They're not even authorized to be tested on animals, let alone be taken by humans. So it's unbelievable what people are prepared to do and put their body through
to win.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Bron, what's your goals? Like, obviously, you're trying to go to, like, you're competing to get to Tokyo. What happens then after? Like, now you've got your degrees.
Yep.
What's your plan, vision of what life will be like?
Good question. I'm still working this one out. I've done a bit. I'm working on my practicing certificate at the moment while I can. I think I've got 20 days left of prac that I've got to get done before I can get admitted to the Supreme Court as a lawyer. But I'm really passionate about, obviously, sport and integrity, and some of the things I've been exposed to just through sport, I've sort of really become really passionate about and advocate for, and I really want to give back in that way. So there's new stuff happening in sport integrity at the moment. There's a national sports tribunal being formed that's going to deal with anti-doping, match fixing, all the things that come along with sport, about human rights issues and discrimination and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully as that starts to develop and take shape, there'll be something that it's going to attract me to it and latch on. But yeah, I like I said, I think I want to find the same enjoyment I find for sport in my profession, and that's going to be having to enjoy that daily grind of every day. It might be the same or similar, but it might be the toughest day, but what's going to keep you coming back. And for me, like, I love the challenge. I love to push myself to that next level, whatever it might be in, and see what I can do, and hopefully I like to think that things are going to take care of themselves a little bit, but I'm sure there'll be some hustling by me along the way of what I need to do, making some plans, trying some things, because, you get to 30, say, when you retire from sport and you've never worked a proper job. Like, I've worked jobs that will allow me to train and play, but not jobs that I've necessarily been really passionate and interested in. They've just been there they give me the money, they give me the hours that I need to keep playing and keep training and keep traveling. So we'll see. I can't wait to see what the future holds. I'm super excited for this year, and I can't wait to get my social life back, which will be great, not having to run my social calendar through my coach about, can I go to this wedding or can I go to this family event, and being able to make plans in advance will be like, these days people are asking you, like, I have to tell you a week out because I've just got no idea what we're doing. But being able to say, yeah, I'll put that in my diary, I can do that definitely, and I can't wait.
Yeah. So what's your advice for people that are wanting to get to, like, your level, the elite level? What things would you say that they need to implement?
I think is having a clear goal, but also not being locked into how you're going to get there. Because like right now, every single girl in our team has gotten to where they are, to the same place as me, completely differently. I think it's really making sure you knock those goals down to the pure basic level of, what do I need to do today? And by breaking that down, when you look at the long journey, it seems like so distant down the path, but you look at all those little steps that are going to get you, whether it's making a phone call that you were too afraid to call that person the day before because you weren't sure about if they were going to accept new people into a team or into a squad or into whatever it might be professionally. I think that's the biggest thing, of having those micro goals and micro steps along the way, and not beating yourself up if you have taken a backward step and had to reevaluate, realign, because you might have the windiest path. I always think about snakes and ladders. Like you might have 4 steps up and then be knocked 2 steps back and then jump 10 steps, and like there's no gradual process. When you look back, you think, oh, that was actually pretty gradual, but it's there's no right way to do things, but it's having that mindset to set your goals and really break them down to the barest minimum, whether it's like, all right, today I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. and have a really productive day. Because I find when I sleep to 10, I'm useless for the whole day. But when I get up, make myself get up, have a coffee, sit down, plan my day, suddenly it's 9 a.m. and I've done everything and I've got the rest of the day to work out what's next.
Yeah.
But for me, it's my thing is really about stripping it right down to the basics about what do I do next? What is the next thing for me to do? And not worrying about, I'm never going to get to that end goal, but just working on those little steps.
It's like building a house. You start with the foundation and stuff. So
exactly.
You don't just plonk a house on the land.
No, and it's not going to, one knockback is not going to destroy your foundation. It might put a hole in your wall, but that foundation is still there. It's still strong and it's still going to be able to rebuild back to even better than where you were before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I absolutely agree with you with your advice. I think like it's so common for us just to focus on where we want to be and not figuring out what does my life look like if I want to be that particular whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So I think like knocking it down into daily actions is fantastic advice. Yeah. Wow, cool. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your journey. And I think, when is the Tokyo Olympics? Is it
24th of July they kick off. So
cool.
We're almost down to 6 months away, 6 months left of training hard of my career.
Yeah, no, this will be exciting. And we'll be able to watch you on TV, I assume?
Yes, I hope so. I believe so. We had the US out here just last week and they haven't lost in 3.5 years and we knocked them off, the first team in the world to do so in 68 games, I believe. So, and they're world number ones. So it's,
look out.
We're right up there. And it's going to be an interesting year.
Yeah, very exciting. Yeah. So guys, if you want to check that out, I'll put Bron's details all in the description below. And then that way we can all support you for July.
Last week of July, first week of August.
Perfect. Yeah. Right, we'll tune in then.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Thanks for listening in, guys. If you're on Apple, please leave a 5-star written review. If you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. All right, I'll see you next week with the next inspiring story.